Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we are going to be talking about 40% silver. And we're going to be covering it from a silver stacking perspective, thinking about if it's a good way to stack. There's a lot of beginners and there's a lot of people who know a fair amount who might want to get a second thought about, considering, is this a good way to go about being involved with silver, stacking silver as an investment? And there certainly are pros and cons and just considerations to have when you're thinking about purchasing this type of silver. So I've made a list and we're going to get into my perspective on the state of 40% silver and whether or not you should consider it. All right, so in front of me, I've got a book, the Kennedy Half Dollars book, and it's been filled out. For those basic context who don't know, 40% silver covers 1965 all the way to 1970, and then there's also in 1976 there was some higher premium bicentennial 40% silver that was produced in the quarters, in the half dollars, as well as the dollars. Those coins are not really going to be what we're going over today. We're going to really be focusing on the 40% half dollars, which for circulation was from 1965 all the way up to 1969. You should know, and maybe this is an advantage, 1970D is a higher premium coin. As are, any of the proof coins are slightly better, but 1970D is like the key date of the series. It's not worth a ton more. Maybe it's like a $10 or $15 coin. But I mean, we can get into the pros, and something, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but you can basically complete the full set of variety or non-cherry picker coins for very cheap. It's a great set to collect if you're just getting into collecting, in terms of, you want to complete something and you can do that. Now, I would argue that we'll get into this more later, but there are some 90% silver sets that you could start with that would also be good and probably better. But this is not a bad way to do that. There's not, if you include the 90% silver ones made in 1964, that's only like 6 years or 7 years, and not a huge investment, while you can still have fun completing something. But I think the biggest thing with these is that you get below spot silver. So that sounds pretty appealing. Now, when we unveil a little bit more about what that really means, maybe it will be less attractive, but often this is going to be trading below the silver value, which sounds pretty surprising, but that really is the case. It's much different from 90% or constitutional or junk silver. That is considered in a totally different bracket, whereas the 40%, you can generally purchase it for below spot. Certainly if you buy from a local dealer in person, often dealers kind of consider it a really kind of an annoyance, so they just want to get it off of their hands. And that's why, often you can come in there. You can also buy uncirculated 40% silver for very little premium, even if they're kind of blast white. So that's certainly something to consider. That's why people often will think about doing it, because they're getting silver at a very cheap price. But I think that does come with some drawbacks. And overall, a little spoiler, I would probably say to just stick with 90%, but you can see if my thesis makes sense or not. Again, you can collect a full set of them. There's a potential for varieties. So whether that's some repunched mint marks, or that's some double dies, especially on the SMS, but there's a fair amount of double die coins. There's a fair amount of just errors through this series, and you can, have some incremental bonuses there, but you can also get that, there's plenty of that sort of thing on Washington quarters or Roosevelt dimes. It's not like varieties are only on the Kennedys, and in fact, often their prices are not going to be super high. Really, the one to look for here is going to be a 90% silver coin for one of the dates that should be 40% silver, or maybe a clad 1970. I don't know if any of those exist, but that's really the super expensive 40% half dollars, as well as the 1964 SMS. But that's not a 40%er. These coins don't really have a ton going for them from a collectability standpoint, in the sense that they're not really a hot topic or a hot coin item that a lot of people are collecting. One underrated thing is that if silver price absolutely collapses, these would probably be the best investment, because they are 50 cents but only 40% silver. So you'd be taking quite a loss, but theoretically you could spend them a lot more effectively than a 90% silver coin, because that 90% silver coin will contain, over double the amount of silver in the same amount of, spending power. But I don't think that that's really a valid reason to choose these over a 90% silver coin. You get to buy them for below spot. That's certainly a pro, but the big con is that you actually can't really sell them for, it's not like you magically are able to spend them. Maybe if silver price skyrocketed, you would be able to do well with these, but I think that you'd also be able to do just as well with 90% silver. And because people are spending less on these 40% silver coins, it creates a liquidity issue. There's a lot less demand. It's not as recognized. It's not traded. 90% silver is traded at a multiple of face value. And this is one, you don't really trade war nickels as a multiple of spot, but you do trade these, but the valuation is kind of dramatically lower compared to the amount of silver that's in the coins. Since they're less desired, they're less easy to integrate with a 40% stack or a 90% stack. They're really the only 40% silver coins out there, outside of maybe like some Swedish. There's like a few foreign 40%, but it's like very standalone, and they're challenging to melt. I think you can melt them, but refiners will charge more to melt them. It's more of an involved process, and they also take up more space. So, these are the same size as the 90% silver half dollars, but the 90% silver half dollars have over 2 times the amount of silver in them. So if you're stacking, these bags of these are going to just take up more if you have a vault, or if you have some sort of situation where you store these. These are going to be less efficient. And they are just less recognized overall. I think a lot of people often don't even realize that they say in their head, people who really don't know a ton, it's 64 and back. Sometimes these even look like they have a copper ring around them, but they'll say, 65 and on doesn't really have any value. And for a while, when silver price was low enough, these really were worth even, they weren't worth holding on to unless you thought the silver price was going to appreciate dramatically. So, that really all combines to have a situation where I think some people swear by them, in the sense that they try to buy them when nobody else will. Maybe they're paying, 60 or 75% of the silver value. I've just experienced, I've worked in coin shops, I've seen coin dealing operations. People really try to avoid, buying these in a meaningful way at prices anywhere close to the silver price, just because they know that it's pretty challenging to then turn around and get out of them. So all that being said, these are still American silver. They are recognized. Just because they're less recognized, it's not like people are in the dark about these. But I think that when you're especially viewing it as a silver investment and not from a collector perspective, you want to go with what's recognized. You want to go with, 90% silver does not have high premiums. It's not like a really rare situation on those where, maybe some types of silver, there is kind of some scarcity or some premium issues, but just because it's a little bit lower premium, you really struggle to sell these. They're a lot less desired, and I think that actually makes sense. It's kind of a standalone anomaly, like the war nickels, which I also do not recommend purchasing for first-time silver purchasers. That all combines to a situation where, if you acquire these, certainly pick them out of circulation when you see them. It could be fun to coin roll hunt, but I think the end goal, if you want to, go about it from a goal-oriented perspective, would be to, you could go with the 1964 90%ers, and that's a lot better. Often Franklins don't really have much more of a premium over those, and they're a little more recognizable as being old, so I might even like the Franklins better. And I think, one thing I did mention earlier, the Roosevelt dime kind of analogy, or why these compare. Roosevelt dimes, there are also really no key dates, and that's all 90% silver, and you can have a fun time collecting those as an initial collection. Same pretty much thing with the Franklin half dollars. So that's how I kind of contextualize all that. I would say avoid these. Don't it's not like it's the worst thing. Don't feel like you really made a bad mistake. But if you can, when you're purchasing silver, sometimes people will try to new people, offload 40% as a way to kind of market and say, hey, you're getting a good deal better than 90%. I really think it's better to stick with the more liquid and just kind of more classic silver investment in 90% silver or certainly something else, maybe like a bar or a silver round. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and definitely subscribe to the channel and connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I also have a website, treasuretownYT.com, where you should go so that you can learn more about coins as well as what's happening on the channel and possibly find a place to sell your coins and collectibles. I also want to talk about some of my other projects like CoinMeltPrice.com, which shows precious metals prices as well as the melt values of coins containing those precious metals, both US and world. I also have CoinsMetalsCards.com, which will develop into a full marketplace as well as a news source for coins, metals, cards, as the name might suggest. And then TreasureTownCoins.com, which long-term will be my coin dealing entity separate from the channel. And lastly, What'sTheGrade.com, which will be a stickering service for already certified collectibles where you can get a approval or verification of the grade on the holder. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you on some of my other videos.